5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief response to that. I mean, yes, we're thinking about gun control and trying to reduce gun violence because of Nashville and Louisville and Alabama yesterday. So it seems to me that it's unsustainable. We need to do something to address it. I believe the Second Amendment is important, but I think protecting second graders from being killed is important as well. Ms. Harris and Ms. Brame, Mr. Borgen, I want to commend you. I was a prosecutor for 12 years, 4 as a federal prosecutor, 8 as a local prosecutor in Maryland, which is kind of the birthplace of the victims' rights movement. And so I understand that what you're doing and the role that you play, in fact, it really transformed the criminal justice system in the 90s and the 2000s, and I encourage you to continue on. You don't need that. I can tell just by what I've heard from you today, you're going to sustain it and keep fighting on behalf of your loved ones, but I commend you for what you've done. I did want to say this with respect to whether this is serious or not, and I'm not going to look in people's hearts and try and judge the motives for whether these hearings are serious or not, or what's behind them, but I'll say this. We've got Republican colleagues who've introduced legislation to eliminate the ATF, eliminate the FBI. Mr. Trump called for defunding the Department of Justice and the FBI. As a former federal prosecutor, I can tell you that if you get rid of those 3 agencies, there's no federal mechanism or arm to actually prosecute violent crime at the federal level. That means terrorism, that means gangs, that means multi-state issues. The big takedown of the Sinaloa cartel on Friday, I think was the reason we were able to do that was because we had a strong federal government that was able to cross federal lines and international lines and complete those prosecutions. So I certainly oppose to defund the federal law enforcement arms that we've had discussions about. And with respect to the funding in general, I think even at the local level, the federal government can and has been helpful and should be more helpful too from a funding standpoint. I think it's right, we can't really meddle in local prosecutions per se, but funding for victims' rights, for resources, for training, for hiring and retention police officers, because I know police departments are competing now for a shortage of officers. So I think it's important for us to try and step in that way. But I would encourage my colleagues on the other side to speak about the specific types of proposals they would put forward at the federal level to address the local crime issues that you're talking about here today, because I haven't heard any so far. With that, I'll yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Goldman.
Thank